The Chicago Bulls are 8-2 in their last 10, and as a Bulls fan, I just really can't bring myself to care. Bronny James continues to prove the haters wrong. Jimmy Butler comes out about his feelings on Heat culture. All of that and more in this week's edition of NBA News. Hello everybody, welcome to Rusty Bucket. Subscribe to the channel and drop a like, and check us out over on Spotify and Apple Podcasts if you would like to enjoy this video as an audio-only experience. It's just my face. You don't really need me here. But with that out of the way, let's talk about this week's news. The first things first, let's talk about Bronny James having a career night both in the NBA and in the G League. He scored 17 points in what was basically garbage time for a lot of it, but still, to the Milwaukee Bucks. Obviously, very shorthanded Lakers, somewhat shorthanded Bucks, and a lot of these points came in garbage time. However, doing this, scoring 17 points as a late second round draft pick in basically any context is at least some degree of impressive, and to me, at least a degree of impressive enough worthy of ending these conversations about whether or not he belongs in the NBA, because he absolutely does. I will expand upon that point in a video on Little Rusty Bucket, so if you want to check that out, that'll be coming out today. Top link in the description and pinned comment and all that. But seriously, for the pick that he is, the place that he was taken, the roster spot that he has displayed enough to prove that he has earned it. 39 points over in the G League and an efficient 17. He is a good defender. He has decent moves. He has a really good floater range shot, and his jump shot form looks good. There's enough there, man. I'm sorry if you're still holding out as a hater, but there's enough there. Just bear in mind, this is very important, the scale of what we're talking about. The second round pick, a late second round pick, doing anything in the NBA, even against not the best competition, is something. So shout out to Bronny for that. I don't want to do the thing where I'm just talking about Bronny because, like I said, he's not the type of player that I normally would talk about because he's the 55th goddamn pick and he's played one real meaningful NBA game, but the other people on the other side of this want to talk about him so much about why he sucks, so I don't know, I feel the need to take up the mantle in support of him. But with that said, yeah, that's enough Bronny. Speaking of the Lakers, let's talk about their horrible loss to the Chicago Bulls. The Bulls wrecked LeBron in his return from injury with an impressive 146-115 on Saturday night. Luka scored 29 of his 34 points in the first half and hit 8 3-pointers, while James had just 17 points after a 7-game absence. Rui Hachimura was also returning from a 12-game absence, and Reeves had 25 points in this game. But allowing 146 to the Chicago Bulls is quite a bit, to say the least. But at the same time, the Bulls have also been rolling lately, so maybe it isn't even all that surprising. In this game, Manas Buzelis, my king, my favorite player in the fucking NBA, Manas Buzelis, put up 31 points. Josh Giddey put up 15 points, 17 assists, and 8 steals, which is an absolutely bonker box score. He also had 10 rebounds, so he was just 2 steals shy of a quadruple-double. Coby White was dominant while hitting 6 3-pointers, and he's been averaging over 30 over this recent stretch. They have just been on a very good run of playing good basketball, but it's also in the month of March. And to me, it kind of seems like the Bulls do this a lot, where they suck for a majority of the year, and then they just have a stretch where it actually makes sense and everything hits in stride. But it's usually by the time that I have already completely de-invested in the team based on what they were earlier on in the season. Going into the year, I knew that this Bulls team was going to be experiencing some major trades. They only ended up doing the Zach LaVine deal, but they should have cleaned house. So I was already uninvested from the onset. But on top of that, I just don't like a lot of the players on this team, and very few of them are even going to be here in the long term. It seems like Josh Giddey is going to be, which I have a lot of feelings on, but Coby White's probably going to be as well, and that's cool. Ayo Dosunmu sticking around would be cool with me, but pretty much everybody else on this roster is more or less expendable. Also, Buzelis is not. I can't believe my king, I love Buzelis. He is Andre Karolinko 2.0, and he's on my basketball team. As much as I hate the people who operate this franchise, I will give them credit for drafting someone who I do genuinely very much enjoy watching play basketball. But aside from that, dude, I just can't get invested in the long term, and I can't get invested in the short term. And the reason for that, this was very well described by Kenny in his video about Chicago's recent success. There's kind of two different sports fans, and I respect the hell out of both versions of them, but it's the guy who just wants to know how they're doing that week, that month, that season, and then it's people who, like me, who have a very stronger, more nuanced understanding about the landscape of the league, what long-term viability there is, and I can't just go, oh, they're 8-2, that means they're on an upward trajectory. Really, it's like, oh, they're 8-2, well, they had a good 10 games, but what is the meaningful thing in this in the long run? It's not really there. I love if you can watch the basketball that doesn't feel that meaningful in the long term and still get a lot of satisfaction out of it, because at the end of the day, watching your team win a game is fun, and I watched them play this Lakers team, and I got some enjoyment out of it for sure, because, yeah, it's the dudes in red that I supported my entire life growing up. But lately, I'm just finding myself more and more uninvested, which it's not required for me to be an invested fan in the Chicago Bulls as a franchise in order for me to do my job. In fact, I don't talk about the Bulls at all anymore. Maybe the least that I have at any other point in my career, and it's just because they have beat me down after year of accepting mediocrity. And as far as I'm concerned, this is still mediocrity. It's just on the high end of that spectrum at the current moment. Josh Giddey is probably going to get starting caliber point guard money next year, $25 to $30 million going forward. I do think that he has shown enough that I can't just outright be like, nah, still doesn't belong in the NBA, still isn't like a real rotational piece, because he has a lot of things that he is good at. But as of right now, I would never, ever want my lead ball handler to be somebody who is a mid to, I still think, bad shooter, a bad finisher, and not a particularly strong ball handler, and a bad defender, not a very good defender anyways. All of these are things that he's improved enough to the point where I can't just dismiss him, but there's still so many things foundationally wrong with him, and like the fact that he's put up numbers is not that significant to me in terms of him actually improving that much, because if you look at his overall numbers for the Bulls this season and his numbers in year 2 with the OKC Thunder, they're basically the same. The only difference is his threes have been going in this year. So that's good. That's an improvement. He has marginally improved as a three-point shooter pretty much every season. And while I still think when the playoffs come around, he would be proven to be illegitimate from out there, at the end of the day, it is improvement. So Josh Giddey's gotten better at basketball. I can give him that credit, but it's not going to make me like him. It's not going to make me enjoy watching him or his play style. And unfortunately, a recent stretch from the Bulls is not going to get me to care that much, because long term, we're going to be right back in the middle like we always are. If you're a Bulls fan and you've been enjoying this recent stretch of time, this recent stretch of games, I don't want to take that away from you. I'm just letting you know what my thoughts are. Highlighted here is recent stretch of his games. He's definitely been better as of late, over 20 points per game, around 10 assists, 8 assists per game in that category. He's also a pretty damn good rebounder at the guard position, so I will give him that credit. Josh Giddey, he's been on a bit of a tear. Kobe White has also been on a tear, which is why he is the NBA Player of the Week for the Chicago Bulls, averaging 30 points, 4 assists, and he's doing it on over 55% shooting as a small guard. Meanwhile, Kevin Durant out in Phoenix is averaging 27, 4, and 6, and the Phoenix Suns have gone 3-0, which for them, that's basically a 10-game win streak, so good for them. Our nominees out west who fell short: Devin Booker, Luka Doncic, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and Kawhi Leonard. Out east, it is Giannis, Paolo Banchero, Cade Cunningham, Josh Giddey, Quentin Grimes, Benedict Mathurin, and Miles Turner, Kristaps Porzingis and Jason Tatum, and Trae Young. James Harden moves up to 12th all-time on the NBA scoring list. I'm actually curious how much higher he will end up on this thing, because I think he's got 4 or 5 seasons left in him. You know, this recent stretch from the Clippers has kind of made me think higher of his longevity than I originally did, because after he got injured with the Nets, he definitely has not been the same player, but he's a lot closer to the same player than I have ever seen him be since then. So yeah, shout out to James Harden, dude. If he plays till 40, it would not surprise me. He is good enough as an offensive generator that even if he does lose the first step as time goes on, as he already has to a degree, he seems to have regained it lately, but he could lose it again and still be a good player, and I would not be shocked at all. I mean, what are his career total points? Because I'm not actually sure. Total points. Yeah, 27,416. Yeah, James Harden is absolutely going to be joining the 30K point club. So yeah, good on James Harden. All right, some playoff watch stuff. Over in the Eastern Conference, Cleveland leads Boston for the top seed, and they're pretty much going to stay there at this point. They've been losing a little bit more recently. I think they went on a 3 or 4 game losing streak, so that does stand out to a lot of people as them maybe like cooling down at the very end. I don't really buy into any of that, but it looked like maybe Boston would actually be able to sneak up on them record-wise, but it seems like that's probably not going to happen. The New York Knicks, Milwaukee Bucks, Indiana Pacers, and Detroit Pistons have secured at the bare minimum play-in spots, and out west, the Thunder, of course, clinched the top seed for the second straight season. Denver, Houston, LA, and Memphis are within 3 games of the number 2 seed, and the Houston Rockets have at least clinched a play-in spot. And the following teams have been eliminated from the playoffs. In the East, the Hornets and the Wizards, and in the West, the Pelicans and the Jazz. Not that that is surprising to anybody, not that anybody expected those teams to take a leap. Wasn't going to happen. Here are our current standings at the moment. If you would like to see just a quick run through of what these playoffs might actually look like if, the season ended right now, we did do a video on that about a week ago, so you can go check that out. But lots of cool matchups going on here. I really like the idea of a Knicks versus Pistons round 1, even though I also really like the idea of a Pacers versus Pistons round 1. This can obviously still be determined by the last couple of games, but I like the idea of a lot of these matchups. The playoffs are going to be so sick, dude. Dyson Daniels making history on the defensive end and making a very strong case for there being a perimeter defender of the year award. Dyson is the youngest player since at least the 73-74 season with 200 steals in a season. He is only the 5th player under 23 years old to achieve this, joining Magic Johnson, Chris Paul, Isaiah Thomas, and Dudley Bradley. Shout out my guy, Dudley Bradley. He needs 15 more steals to pass Chris Paul's 216 from the 2008-2009 season, and he could even surpass Scottie Pippen's 232, Michael Jordan's 221, and John Stockton's single-season record of 244. Despite this, Jacob will still argue to the moon and back that he does not deserve DPOY. Yeah, deserve is a layered word. I think he deserves a perimeter defensive player of the year, as I mentioned as I introduced this. He's not the best defender in the league, but he's probably the best defender on the perimeter in the league. So I do think that needs to just be broken up into 2 awards, because I'm personally just never going to argue for a player to win that award who isn't the best defender in the league. And the best defender in the league has always been and always will be a center or a forward. Really a very versatile, tall forward or plays big forward at the bare minimum. Guards just have too many limitations, and it's not Dyson's fault. Dyson's doing everything he can. But I don't want to highlight what award he won't be getting this season. He's still breaking records, and could he get 44 steals left? That seems like not enough time for that. There's like 10 to 12, maybe if he had 15 games and he got 3 every game, I guess it is reasonably doable, but unlikely he will get the very record, but he could end up finishing very high on that record tier. I do think he will pass Chris Paul at the bare minimum. Jimmy Butler comes out against Heat culture, or at least about Heat culture. He doesn't have a strictly negative opinion, but there's some nuances to it. So, according to this recent article from The Athletic, Jimmy Butler's Heat relationship devolved to where the trade was the only solution. Jimmy Butler thinks the term Heat culture is a little bit overused. I'm not saying it in a bad way, but I think it's a little bit like overused talking about the Heat culture. It's a great organization, but I think a large part of that culture is you get the guys that buy in with the winning mindset. You get some guys that buy in, you get some really good players, and you get the opportunity to talk about Heat culture a little bit more. I'm not saying it to talk down or anything, but I think whenever you have really good players, you can name it whatever you want to name it. That's a really good point, and that's kind of the thing that I have said about Heat culture, where it kind of has become a crutch, or more cynically, an excuse for how this team has performed in recent years. The idea of just like, yeah, get good players, focus on that first and foremost, call it whatever you want after. I agree with Jimmy on that 100%. Like, I think the problem was they identified so much with their ability to turn scrubs into diamonds that they never thought about what they could do with diamonds, turning those into, I don't know, you don't turn diamonds into anything, so this metaphor sucks, but you get my point. If the culture is so good that it can turn bad players into good ones, what can you do with good players? Turn them into great ones. You can't control grown men in this line of work. You can try, but I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm going to show up, I'm going to compete, and I'm going to help us win. So you can be mad. You can paint a picture that is not entirely true. I don't even need to get into that. They know what they're doing. You got to paint somebody to be the bad guy. I'll take being a bad guy. Makes no difference. I'm here now. I'm competing at a high level, and I'm helping the Golden State Warriors win. They want me here. Hell, I'm cool being the bad guy over there. Yeah, that pretty much summarizes where we are at with Jimmy. They are going to be playing in a game against each other. If it's not today, it's very soon. In Miami. So we'll see if Miami's crowd boos him. I do think he will be the type of guy, though, where there are boos, but I don't think they're going to last super long. I think his legacy there will overall still be super positive, and Heat fans will still appreciate his time there. The wound is just very fresh right now. That's kind of how it's got to be. Sticking with the Heat as a subject, the team has had some turmoil ever since this deal went down. They had a 10-game losing streak that was finally ended by Andrew Wiggins having 42 points in a win over the Charlotte Hornets. Jimmy Butler has never scored 40 or more for the Heat in the regular season, so there is a degree of irony to that. Since the Butler deal in early February, however, the Heat are 6-18. There have been some debunked now rumors about Jaime Jaquez and Nikki Spoelstra, the ex-wife of course, the head coach, Eric Spoelstra. That was reported. It seems to be a false claim. But wow, could you fucking imagine? Does the Jimmy Butler trade explain this poor run? Is that the entirety of the discussion here? Yeah, that's pretty likely they're going to make it even with their recent skid. I don't know, dude. When this team came together after the Butler deal, I actually kind of liked it on paper, the idea of playing some kind of tall, lengthy game where Andrew Wiggins is your 2, Jovic is your 3, Bam is your 4, Ware is your 5, and obviously Tyler as your point guard. I don't think they've really tried that lineup a whole lot, at least not from what I have heard from Miami Heat fans. I will admit, I haven't watched the most Miami Heat games recently because I didn't really like watching them before this, so after, it's not going to make me like them anymore, and I'm just going to have all the more reason to dismiss them as a serious playoff contender. So at that point, as the year goes along, there are certain teams that just fall to the wayside for me, and the Miami Heat have been one of them, admittingly. But I liked the idea of Wiggins there just being a hyper good role player that fits everything else going on, but Bam Adebayo is not the offensive option that we've seen him be in the past. Tyler Hero hasn't been as good recently, so a lot of the stuff that was the reason they were succeeding earlier on in the year, even without Jimmy Butler's presence, has fallen to the wayside, and unfortunately Andrew Wiggins has not been able to pick up the slack as much as he has tried. Yeah, 42-point game against the Hornets, 76% from the field, overall an 87% true shooting, 6 for 8 from outside. Excellent stuff, a good healthy mix of doing the role player stuff, but also mixing in some self-creation, because Andrew can do some self-creation. You just don't want him to get too carried away with it. Yeah, here is their recent losing streak, and it's pretty much mostly good teams. They do have an L to the Charlotte Hornets, but the Bulls, as we've mentioned, have been good this month, so that's not a huge shock. Everybody else is a pretty good team, though, so I can't blame them for losing these games, but they're losing a lot of them by a pretty significant margin. And it's a bit of an L. I believe they lost in overtime in that Pistons game. The LeBronaissance is upon us. Just for the record, when these things are made, a lot of these things I want to do and talk about, and then every once in a while, Rudy's like, react to LeBronaissance. And I'm like, okay, this is what I gotta do. It has admittingly been very funny, but this trend started with a track called LeBron James Glaze Song. At least they are addressing it directly, with a slew of similar remixes surfacing. Why can't I read today? A slew of similar remixes surfacing in the following weeks, mostly created by Illy August. I love you, August. August is a pretty good month. It's not a bad pick. The song led to the creation of a Bronify app on Versal. I don't even know what the fuck Versal is, which hosted all of the LeBron James glazing remixes and other LeBron content. Some people have posited that this is the pendulum swing due to the constant slander from the old heads. You can listen to some of them here. Oh boy. What are the odds we're going to get copyright claimed? UMG already has this, surely. Cause Bronny's gonna get Bronny up in, yeah, wherever he on, damn it, man. He's not really lethal from the free throw. Not to fact check your song. Wow. Yeah, the youth will win in the end. My take is that LeBron will be the GOAT one day unanimously because people who saw Michael Jordan in the 90s will eventually be dead. Bleak, but it's true. And yeah, the youth has picked their side. This is fucking funny as hell. It's especially funny that some of these songs are genuinely good. Obviously, I think most of them, if not all of those, were using a previously established song, but it doesn't mean that they didn't do a good job with the lyrics and the production on it. It's a great bit. I love the LeBron Glazers. I love how much it has become a self-awareness rather than just... When they weren't self-aware about it, it was a lot more annoying. The winners and losers of the week, we have Zachary Risachet, who's also been having a really good stretch of basketball recently. Alex here highlighting that he is shooting 42% on threes, 37% on above the break threes, 48% on the corner, 49% on all mid-ranges, which is really, really good, and 62% at the rim, which could be a little better, but it's still good. Yeah, shooting splits great from all areas of the floor is really, really, really good. That's just such a huge thing for the Hawks, who don't have a lot of bright spots going on right now. They've still managed to play some pretty good basketball after their trade deadline, but that's just because Trae Young is excellent. Mostly that, but Zach's been good recently. Also, shout out to Alex Hoops because his recent YouTube video about Zachary Risachet was really good. It always is. Alex Hoops makes great content. If you want to learn why these players are playing good and not just listen to me yap about some stats, excellent breakdowns over there. Bronny James, 9 consecutive games, 6-3, where he got 10 plus assists and 2 or less turnovers. The Lakers have a recent 3-game losing streak and lost 7 of the last 10. LeBron is minus 44 in 2 games since returning. The Miami Heat, of course, have bad vibes. And Charlotte and Washington are eliminated from the playoffs and will win in the tankathon of it all, so... ultimately, still all good for them. And here is when we get into the best part of the episode, which is NBA T. Lou Williams says Pat Riley moves on from aging players and the Heat should do the same to him. When you're 80 years old, there are things that you probably don't understand or get when it comes to the culture of players. Yeah, I love Pat Riley. I'm the biggest Pat Riley stan. When I see him in winning time, I'm like, that guy is literally me. But, he is 80 years old, and at a certain point, you do need to hang it up. And it seems like now might be the time. Michael Beasley and Lance Stevenson will face off in a one-on-one game on June 6th for $100,000. Magic Johnson thinks that NBA stars sitting out of games for load management is negatively impacting the league's rating. Michael Jordan played in every game. The league has cracked down on it to a degree where I think it's fine now. I understand if maybe he hasn't like fully just adjusted to that yet, or if he's just parroting an opinion from a couple of seasons ago. He's allowed to be a little bit out of touch, but I have never really felt like load management was that big of a deal. It's more of a big deal when you're actually going to games live, but at least if you're a league watcher and not just a team or player watcher, there's so much basketball. There's more than I need. There's so many games to watch. If a player's not playing in one, I can turn on another. There's 82 games for 15. Well, each team's playing 2 times, so 15 times 82. I'm not doing that in my head. The other day I did math and I was off by 2 zeros on that shit, so we're not doing it again. Mark Cuban, if I had any influence, the trade wouldn't have happened. I was just as dumbfounded as everybody else. After I sold the Mavericks, the new owner, Patrick Dumont, decided that okay, and Nico we trust, so here we are. Yeah, he's hinted at this recently, but only now has he directly said as much, which I think is a little crazy because, like, are you supposed to do that while in an ownership group? Like, he's not associated with the Mavericks anymore and free to say what he wants. I wouldn't be surprised if there was some animosity that sprung from that. And then finally, Doc Rivers says that he doesn't get enough credit for winning 3 games in a playoff series where he blew 3-1 leads. Did you get Sentelled? What are you talking about? I didn't see that. There's no fucking way. I'll read this quote and I'll tell you if I think it's real at the end. No one tells a real story and I'm fine with that. It's unfair in some ways. I don't get enough credit for getting the 3 wins. I get credit for losing. I always say, what if we had lost to Houston in 6? No one cares. One of the things that I'm proud of is we've never been swept. All of the coaches have been swept in the playoffs. All the coaches in my teams achieve. My teams achieve. That's all. That's the entire sentence. My teams achieve. A lot of them overachieve, and I'm very proud of that. If this quote is real, why does this guy still have a fucking job? That is such a loser mentality out of your head coach. It'd be one thing if this was a retired guy who's no longer operating in this, but like, when I hear quotes like this, I'm just like, if I was the guy whose job it was to employ you, and I heard you say, give me credit for the 3 wins and the 3-1 lead that I blew, I would fire you on the fucking spot. Are you kidding me? Like, there's one of these that I can give him a pass on, which the first 3-1 of the 3 3-1 leads that he has blown in his career, he lost the first time with the Tracy McGrady Orlando Magic. I can get that. Tracy McGrady has some bad playoff blunders in the past. They weren't favored in the series, I don't believe. Really thin roster outside of T-Mac. So in that first instance, you could argue winning 3 games was more impressive than not winning those 3 games. However, the other 2 times, both of them that were with the Clippers, inexcusable. And you know what? If you lost in 6 to the Rockets that year, you still would have lost a series that you should have won. You still would have fucked up the bag for your team because the Clippers were favored, as they should have been, as was evidenced by the 3-1 lead. That's baffling to me. Rudy, you need to confirm 100% that shit's real. God damn, Doc. I sounded like Bugs Bunny. Quick injury report. Jason Tatum's ankle injury is not expecting him to miss a significant amount of time. Stephen Curry traveled with the team to Miami, could return as early as Tuesday versus the Heat. Nikola Jokic will return during Denver's 5-game home stretch, though unlikely for the next game. Anthony Davis, who's been out for a long time with an abductor injury, returned versus the Brooklyn Nets, scoring 12 points in 27 minutes. Currently on a minutes restriction. And the Mavs managed to avoid forfeiting some games for now. I believe Daniel Gafford is set to return in the near future if he has not already. And Trey Murphy III is unfortunately out for the season with a torn labrum and partial rotator cuff tear in his right shoulder. And then at the very end here, we're just going to rapid fire some impressive box scores from this season, give some flowers out to some of our best performers. Not this season, this week. 41 versus the Chicago Bulls in a win for Devin Booker. 38 in a win versus the Bucks, a 2-point win, and a 11-point win versus the Cleveland Cavaliers, in which Durant had 42 points, and Paulo and Franz both had 30-point performances, and in the win versus the Los Angeles Lakers. Kawhi Leonard has been on a recent stretch of playing some seriously good basketball, especially relative to his minutes played. Fred VanVleet had a really, really big game in a close win against the Miami Heat. This is some serious ethical buckets because he had 37 points on 4 free throw attempts, of which he only made 2. So 35 points of pure buckets from Freddie. 40 from CJ McCollum against the Detroit Pistons in a loss. Him and Zion are basically the only decent offensive players who are healthy at this point for this team. And I don't actually know how to say this guy's name, but I have seen him throughout the years because he's another guy who, if it wasn't Zubats, who was my lookalike in the league, it would be him. But I did watch this game against the Knicks, and it was so crazy because he had 7 threes in 19 minutes, went 13 for 14 from the field. It was just, who is this guy hitting all these shots all of a sudden? Like, I know that he's not a terrible player. I've seen actually people say a lot of good things about him. So maybe he is like a real player who could actually get some real minutes, but Jesus, man. 7 for 7 from 3 in 19 minutes is some wild shit. Here are our plays of the week.
Westbrook to beat the clock. Got it! He has passed Kevin Garnett.
Yep, that is Russell Westbrook jumping into the top 20 in the all-time scoring list with a deep three-pointer. Here we have Devin Booker, who calls game against the Milwaukee Bucks. Classic Devin Booker bucket. And last, my favorite play of the week personally was this just perfectly run fast break by the Cleveland Cavaliers.
From Donovan Mitchell.
That is not the same thing. All right, well, Rudy put the wrong clip, so we're going to watch Donovan Mitchell throw a crazy skip pass instead.
Seeing eye feed.
Look at that, through both hands of the Utah Jazz defenders. That is some beautiful stuff. Crazy cross-court pass, such a bullet, throwing it without even picking up the ball. Gorgeous stuff. That is why Cleveland is so fucking good.
Just have to go back to that until you find your rhythm again.
Filipowski left it short. Garland ahead to Strus, and Strus hammers it home as the Cavaliers run off the miss, and they've...
But yeah, that is it. That has been your NBA news. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.